Okay, Sarah, so the Ravens have now officially franchise tagged their all-pro and defensive tackle Justin Madubuike following what we all know was a breakout season. He's locked in for over $22 million for 2024. The two sides have discussed a long-term deal, but nothing came to fruition prior to the deadline.
So the question becomes, Bobby, what's next for the Ravens? Well, ESPN's Adam Schefter, he weighed in with what he's hearing from Baltimore and what their next top signing priority is this offseason.
I'm Bobby Trossett alongside my co-host Sarah Ellison. It is Wednesday, March 6th, and this is your morning Ravens update from Inside the Vault, presented by one of this month's small business Patreon title sponsors, our friends at S&R Laundry Services, a laundry and dry cleaning pickup and delivery service in Baltimore and surrounding areas. You can visit cleanmylaundry.com to learn more.
So we still got a little bit more time until next week's opening of free agency, but based off of franchise tag news and cuts and all those types of things that was forced by that deadline, we now know about so many free agent veterans that are about to hit the market. So we're going to run through several of those and see which could maybe be in the Ravens price range, considering what they just spent on Madubuike.
How dare my father call during our intro. Plus, longtime Baltimore Sun columnist Mike Preston put out a commentary piece which, personally, I found to be blatantly disrespectful to Ravens linebacker Roquan Smith, so you know we'll have a response to that.
How do you not have your phone on silent during our intro? We have all of that and more coming up. Thanks for waking up with the Morning Vault, where you get the most important Ravens news and our opinions in about 30 minutes. Whatever, we always have time for our parents, right? So
always. Shout out both of our rents who are listeners, especially your mother.
So the news is in. It's official. The Ravens have given the franchise tag to Justin Madubuike, as you mentioned up top. He's locked in for $22.1 million. It's not any small chunk of change. As we know, they've been chatting for really 2 years. Chatting's not the right word, but they've been trying to get a deal done for since last offseason. That hasn't happened yet. So here's just the facts of what comes along with a franchise tag. First of all, they use the non-exclusive tag. They can still negotiate with each other, but Justin Madubuike could also potentially negotiate with other teams. Okay. And he can do that. And if he happened to strike a deal with another team, the Ravens can either match that or they would get 2 first-round picks for Justin Madubuike in return. Okay, but the Ravens and Madubuike, they still have until July 15th to work out a long-term deal. And based off of statements from the Ravens, it looks like they're going to try to do that.
Yeah, let's skip ahead here to EDC's statement, courtesy of the Ravens. We were unable to agree on a contract extension with Justin before the deadline and will use the franchise tag. Justin is a great player in person, and we will continue to negotiate a long-term deal with him. And to your point, they have until July 15th to do so. This was a no-brainer. You look at in terms of keeping him around in Baltimore, right? That was a no-brainer. You look at what he improved and how he improved from 2022 to 2023, particularly in the quarterback pressures department, 32 to 77. I mean, that's a significant jump. He brought it from an interior pressure standpoint. He led the NFL with 38 pressures from a 3-tech alignment, and he aligned as a 3-tech defensive tackle on a team high 62.4% of defensive snaps. Then from a sack production standpoint, and he just as big of a jump in terms of, and okay, maybe not by volume, but when you think about how difficult it is to sack the quarterback in today's NFL, to go from 5.5 a year ago to 13 in 2023. Ooh. I mean, the guy with on top of that, 33 quarterback hits. So you think about the timing and the finish, and man, he had a career year, Sarah, and this is a guy that you want to keep around. The Ravens understood that, and that's what ultimately led to the franchise tag decision.
Yeah, well, let me even be a little bit more nuanced with that. I think it was 1,000% the correct decision to franchise tag him. You don't let somebody of this caliber. I mean, are you kidding me? More than doubling each year since he's been in the league. Not only is it the sacks that go up, but from 9 QB hits to 33, that's crazy. Now,
Right.
so the point is, yeah, you can't let that just walk out the door for, say, a third round compensatory pick, right? In like
Yeah.
next year's, the 2025 draft. So you have to do a franchise tag. Now, personally, I'd be open. I mean, if he is like set on I don't know how far apart they are. What I know is that they've been trying for 2 off seasons now. And I know they've been unsuccessful. I don't know Madubuike's number, but I know he's free to ask it. And I know that if he were to hit the free agent market, once suitors got into a bidding war, who knows how high that thing could go. Okay. So more power to him if he's asking whatever he thinks is fair. On the Ravens side, if they think it's just too high, and if they, if they think there's hope and then they can find something by July, that's fine. But if they're far apart, I wouldn't be against either a tag and trade or somebody. Now, like with Lamar, right? When he was tagged last year, they used the different type, but I wouldn't have given away Lamar Jackson for 2 first-round picks. It's just too hard to find a franchise quarterback, let alone a 2-time MVP. Yeah. With Justin Madubuike, I might be a little bit more open to 2 first-round picks, especially depending on who the team is. Like if they're kind of like a team that doesn't win a lot, and so it's a higher draft pick, and you get two first rounds there, then it's something to talk about. Yeah. If somebody's around to give some sort of blockbuster offer, I'm listening. But 1,000%, they couldn't just let them walk in free agency. So the franchise tag was absolutely necessary.
Gosh, you could take one of those 2 first-round picks and potentially replace him with a pick.
At least maybe 80% of the production. I don't know about 13 sacks and 33 quarterback hits, but I get your point. Yeah.
Yeah, like over the duration of a rookie deal, but and then save in the long run, obviously from a monetary standpoint. But to your tweet here too, you talk about the defensive foundation, assuming that he will be there in 2024. Mm-hmm. It's looking pretty substantial. Not only do you have an all-pro, an all-pro in all 3 levels, mm-hmm. Madubuike up front, Rowe in the middle, mm-hmm. Kyle on the back end, but you've got foundational pieces on top of that, like Marlon, Brandon Stevens, Marcus Williams, on top of the 3 guys that I just mentioned. And to your point in this tweet, free agency and the draft haven't even kickstarted yet. So there's going to be more additions. And yeah, particularly at edge and cornerback, you would hope, just based on some of the depth needs there. But this is a great, you think about how youthful this team is on both sides of the ball, and the guys that are here, moving forward for maybe not the long term, but foundation pieces that are here for the next couple years. You feel pretty comfortable. Just sort of the moves that need to be made to bolster that group around them.
Yeah, there's without a doubt, this is a foundation of you never know about injuries, but this isn't the foundation for, top 5, top 8 defense at the least, maybe higher, depending on how you plug holes elsewhere. And I specifically added Brandon Stevens to this list because I feel like he's one of the most underappreciated players on the Ravens, with the way he just shows up week in and week out. And Marlon Humphrey was down, and we've given praise to Ronald Darby, rightfully so. But on the other side, it was always Brandon Stevens. And so I love that going forward. Now, the other 2 guys that I put on here that are foundational are going to have to stay healthy, Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Williams. In fact, that was hilarious when Tyreek Hill was on Marlon Humphrey's podcast, and they're like, give us your top 5 CBs. And he kind of whispers, he's like, do I have to put him in even just because I'm sitting next to him? And Marlon's like, no, I was not top 5 this year because I wasn't even available. Right. So both him and Marcus need to stay healthy, but those are the foundation pieces. And then guys that I did not include in this, but are going to be, key pieces is like Odafe Owe, but he needs to take another step, or David Ojabo, who needs to take another step. I'm trying to think of other guys who I didn't put it. Travis Jones, just along the defensive line. Like you got Michael Pierce still, you've got Broderick Washington. Like the defensive line is pretty intact. So it is. You got to make sure the edge rushers are there, and hopefully the 2 young guys are going to step up. You got to get more, and then corner. You're definitely going to need depth. So, but I mean, my goodness, without even, like you said, free agency and drafts opening up, it's a great place to start.
So now what, right? If you're Eric DeCosta in the Ravens front office, now what? Now the number crunching begins. Tough decisions potentially loom. And that's where we turn to our friend and Ravens salary cap analyst, Brian McFarland, who put together a really helpful and educational tweet thread on X. And so he says that the Ravens have two
Real
easy
quick.
moves.
Real quick, Bobby, before you talk about how they can make money, let's make it clear. The Ravens currently are now about 10 million over the cap.
They got to get under. Yep.
Right, with this franchise tag. So usually when we're talking about the Ravens being tight against the cap, it's like, oh, they only have about 10 million under the cap. Right now they are 10 million over the cap, and they have until next Wednesday to get under. So that kind of sets up better, I think, to Brian McFarland talking about which cuts they can make to get back to zero.
Right. These screenshots right here exactly are space creators, essentially, options that Eric DeCosta has at his disposal. So 2 easy moves to get under that cap would be restructuring Lamar's contract, which could save $11.1 million, cutting Tyus Bowser at the outside linebacker position, who missed all of last year, which would save $5.5 million. That
Easy
would be
call
enough.
there.
Well, I'm sorry.
I said easy call there.
No doubt. Unfortunately for Tyus's case, who, for his sake, I mean, it's been a total mystery. It continues to be a mystery. So those 2 moves right there alone would be enough to fit the tag for Justin Madubuike. They'll need further moves to create space for other signings, and then restructures for Marcus Williams, Roquan Smith, and or Mark Andrews could create an additional $5.7 million and change. He then goes on to list out a couple potential cuts that could also create space. 2 of them are related to Ronnie Stanley, a pre-June 1 release and a post-June 1 release. The pre would be over $8.3 million in space, and the post would be $15 million in space. Now, here's where there's a third one too, and this is something that you brought up a couple weeks ago, and that's a potential pay cut for Ronnie Stanley. Availability has not been a calling card of his. Overall quality of play post-injury has not been a consistent, steady factor for him, unfortunately. Brian suggests that $4 to $7 million could potentially come as a result of a pay cut.
Now
but I started thinking about
we're talking.
But I started thinking about this since you brought it up. And I thought, Ronnie's a prideful guy. Ronnie's also a business savvy guy. What could potentially incentivize him?
Leverage. Bobby,
Okay,
it's all
talk to me
about
about
leverage. So it's kind of like, listen, here's where we want to get a pay cut that will take you down to X dollars. Talk to his agent. Do you feel like you can get more than that if we cut you tomorrow? Based off of your availability for the last couple of years.
And he looks at the market and says,
looks at the market. He's like, Ronnie, we should have a serious conversation. It's not about none of this. Almost nothing. Almost, I'll put almost, but almost nothing in the business of the NFL is doing anything out of the goodness of your heart.
No.
It's all about leverage. And honestly, we don't have his cap hit listed here. But it's not even really about his cap hit. It's his salary, because the cap hit is that year's salary plus whatever you already earned in a signing bonus.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question is like, what you're asking to take a pay cut in is that base salary, because you've already been paid the bonus, but you were just able to divvy it out throughout the cap throughout the years.
Yeah.
So it's like, here's what we think is a fair base salary for this year,
which is 11 right now. By the way, I just pulled up.
Okay, 11.
Spot track. Yeah.
So can Ronnie Stanley go out and get more than that? Now, of course, they can come back and say, you got a whole lot of dead money. Are you sure that's the right move for you? So they try to get a little bit leverage back, but it wouldn't be out of the goodness of his heart. Unless he wanted to. I mean, there is guys, I guess, who are just like, you know what? The Ravens have taken care of me. I've been through all these injuries, and who knows? I mean, they really the Ravens didn't have any other choice, because the injury started the week after he signed.
Yeah.
So there was no getting out of it at that point. But yeah, to me, it's more about that kind of stuff. What would be a fair deal on the market right now?
The other two options on this list presented by Brian, Morgan Moses at $5.5 million and Pat Ricard at $4 million. And extensions also possible for Ricard, which would create less, but it would keep, one of their prized possessions around who, sure, in the Monken offense, is he as integral as he was in the Roman scheme? Maybe not, but they did utilize him a lot more than we would have expected a year ago.
I just don't know that the Ravens can cut both Stanley and Moses. Like that's
no way, right?
That'd be both those veterans. So to me, it's if you can get that leverage, it's a pay cut with Stanley and cutting Moses.
Yeah. Okay. So that brings us now to, from a free agency perspective, should we go into Jeff's tweet first or Adam Schefter's latest?
Let's go to Adam.
Okay.
Kind of set it.
We all know Schefter, NFL insider for ESPN. He had this to say on NFL Live on Tuesday in terms of what could be next priority-wise for the Ravens front office.
Adam, after tagging Madubuike, what's next for the Ravens this offseason?
Well, Laura, the Ravens have a huge number of free agents, but this is not something that the franchise didn't know was coming. There were a lot of players who they signed on one-year deals. There are some higher-profile players as well, like the linebacker Patrick Queen. And so they're going to go into free agency here to try to re-sign many of their own players. What's interesting to me in Baltimore, most notably also, this is a team that likes to run the football. Gus Edwards is a free agent. J.K. Dobbins is a free agent. More running backs in that free agent market that we talked about. But when Baltimore goes into free agency next week, and really right now, in the days leading up to next week, its goal is going to be to try to retain and re-sign as many of those players as possible, particularly coming off the year the Ravens had. They'd like to run it back as much as they possibly could. The question is how many of those players they'll be able to bring back. Not everybody is going to be able to be brought back because obviously they had success this year. They played well. They'll want to hit the open market, but Baltimore would like to try to re-sign some of its own.
Some of its own. Okay.
Yeah.
Some of its own, which leads us to this exchange on Twitter between Jeff Zrebiec and a follower of his who goes by Quay. So Jeff tweeted the news of Justin Madubuike's franchise tag designation. And Quay wrote him and said, so no free agency for us then, huh, Jeff? And Jeff says they'll figure out a way to create some space. And I'm sure Quay's sentiments are echoed by many in the fan base. You want to see them spend, but they have to be careful and they have to live within the cap restriction world. And so Jeff says they'll figure out a way to create some space and make a few moves, but they won't be big players on the free agent market either way. They never are. Julia comes in and says, I'm assuming contract restructuring is next. And Jeff says cuts, restructures, potentially extensions. I imagine it'll be a combination of things, which is kind of what we were hitting on with Brian's tweets. What's your reaction to all this?
Okay, so number one, agreed. They're gonna be able to make money to sign in some of their own guys. And Bobby, I would still be mildly surprised if they don't get one of the bigger name running backs. We'll leave that for a second because we got news on what happened to the market based off the deadline.
Could be a positive thing.
Right. So when Adam Schefter is emphasizing Ravens are still trying to sign some of their own. Okay. So for the audio only people that didn't see that, here's the list of some of like the notable guys. Okay. And you tell me as I go through each name real quick, re-sign. Or do you think the Ravens are trying to re-sign them or no? OBJ.
No.
Kyle Van Noy.
Yes, but not like nothing imminent.
Agreed. Patrick Queen.
No.
They wish, right?
Yeah.
Okay. John Simpson.
Right. It doesn't mean that they haven't had conversations, but like we all know that's not like
not
feasible.
In the next few
it's
days.
Not feasible.
Right? He's like 7 days away from going to find out his value. Like he's gonna go in.
It's just not feasible. Yeah.
No. John Simpson.
Oh.
I'm going to say no. They're trying to rebuild their offensive line.
All right. I'm on the fence with that one.
Okay. No, clear no for me.
Well, that's true. They said rebuild the other day. Yes, yeah. I'm with you.
Okay. Brent Urban.
Maybe.
I say yes. J.K. Dobbins. I'll put this in a group. J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards.
Are you going to put them in a group together?
You can name them separately. I didn't. I just was going to name them as the running backs. You can.
Well,
again,
okay,
I'll
if you're
put
putting them in a group, if you're going to put them in a group together, then I will say yes.
Oh, well, I didn't mean it that way. I was
But
just
that may
naming
not
them
mean
because they were
both of
both
them.
running backs. I didn't
Yeah.
mean it that way. You can for sure answer them separately. I'll say this. In the next couple of days before, you already I feel like they would be revisited. So in the context of in the next couple of days before free agency opens, I'd say I'm going to lean no. Okay.
They're not going to be that first wave. They may not even be that
I
second
think
wave.
I think the Ravens are going to want to see what can happen before they tie their money up with these guys.
With
Okay. Zeitler.
Zeitler, no.
Okay. Last one. Jadeveon Clowney.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm going to put him in
Yes.
the Kyle Van Noy thing, right? So like come back to him in August, come back to Kyle in August.
But on top of that, he could also be looked at as PQ, pricing himself out of Baltimore the way that they both played.
Yeah. It would be nice to have Clowney wrapped up, but anyway, so I just thought it was interesting that like he's basically saying the Ravens are still pushing for some of their guys. And I'm like, okay, but who in the next couple of days?
Right. How many yeses did we just have?
For the next couple of days, I would put Brent Urban in there. And that's it. Now, in terms of possibly re-signing at some point, I'd say Kyle Van Noy, Clowney, and then maybe one of JK or Gus. And maybe this is like a slight, maybe like 5% chance maybe is OBJ later on.
I'm along the lines of the running backs. I could see one of the two coming back, right? If both of those guys are back, I'll be shocked.
No.
I'd be shocked. And I don't think they'd be wise to do so.
Yeah. Okay.
So should we get to the running back position now?
So that's that. Let's get to news from kind of what was out there. So Saquon Barkley is going to officially hit the free agent market, right? So like, for example, we thought Mike Evans was going to, that didn't happen. Saquon's getting there. He was not tagged today.
Yep.
I mean, I guess it could still potentially get a long-term deal, but here's the running back market. Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift. Buyer's market, if I've ever seen one. And
Deep.
it just
star power.
Yes, and it just makes
Adam called it historic.
Oh yeah, historic. Yes, absolutely. Just a ton going on. Now, I love this tweet from Diana Rossini because you and I have had talks about, Derrick Henry, Barkley before. So she tweets, based on talks with different teams, Jacobs and Barkley sit at the top of the free agent running back list, followed by the next wave of backs like Henry. Yes, next wave. Henry.
Second tier,
Swift,
huh?
And Pollard. That said, some would rather pay second-tier players around $6 million rather than pay $10 million plus to Jacobs and Barkley. Then she says, let's see.
Wow.
So that's kind of been my point from the beginning when we were talking about, people projecting Derrick Henry for 10 million plus. Now, Derrick Henry is on record that his next team, he wants to be able to have a chance to win the Super Bowl. He's made that very clear. And he is older. Okay. But he's still producing. To me, let's say, 10 million plus. Let's say,
Wow.
I said that I'd feel more comfortable with the Ravens paying in the 5 to 6 million range because of how little money they have, but they could get some star power. So if you're getting Derrick Henry for around 5 to 6 million versus, let's say, Saquon or Jacobs for, I don't know, 10, $11 million, are they worth 6 million more? Like in terms of like the production that they would produce and make a difference for the Ravens.
Not for what the Ravens need. No.
Right. Like you got Lamar Jackson next to Henry.
You take anybody. I'll take anybody on this list right here. I know I've been talking Derrick like for weeks and saying that I'd spend crazy money for him or whatever. Yeah. But seriously, when you take a look at what they need and what they already have and what they'll probably get through the draft, I would take any one player on this list. I'm surprised. I know he's got a lot of miles on his tires, but I'm surprised that Derrick's considered in that tier 2. So
I
Saquon,
think it's just
according to
age.
Diana, yeah, it could be age, but the statistics, and I know like
Doesn't matter.
this is where he has gotten to a point in time where historically he would be the outlier in the NFL at his position if he doesn't plateau from this point moving forward. And I recognize that.
Okay, but listen, think of it in Ravens terms of what we just did with outside linebacker. Okay, Kyle Van Noy just had what, 9 sacks?
I'd have to look it up, but
so his production was really good. And there's
yeah.
some guys that are going to pay tons and tons and tons of money for that type of production.
Yeah.
But because of his age, there's no way he's going to go out and sign a blockbuster deal.
No.
And so granted, he's older than Henry, but we're talking about position, like per position, how people usually. So it's because of that.
9 for KVN. That's wild. But
Second
okay.
tier sounds so bad, but so Saquon Barkley is 27, Josh Jacobs is 26, and Derrick Henry is 30.
Yeah.
So
There's a difference.
that makes a big deal when you're 3 and 4 years older at the running back position. So second tier sounds so bad because he's like quote unquote King Henry, right? But that's the whole point. Is in 2024, is he, especially because he has had injuries, but it's not the level of Saquon, right? Especially recently. It's like for $5 million less, I'd way rather go with Derrick.
Absolutely. That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. This is exactly what the Ravens need.
Yeah.
So.
But this is all speculation. This is just,
this is
we'll
early.
see. It's like you said. It's like Diana said. We'll see. But this is what, based off of who she's talking to with teams, that's what she's hearing. And it. I don't know. It does add up that Jacobs and Barkley would be more top tier based off of age.
Age, yeah, age. Here's another look at how things went on Tuesday, pre-designation deadline window for the franchise tag. The Seahawks announced, or at least through sources, so probably agents, they're releasing 3-time Pro Bowl safeties. So each of them have been 3-time Pro Bowlers. Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, saves over $27 million in cash. Significant cap space has opened up for Seattle. Mike Mack went in there and started making moves almost immediately. And you wonder if this becomes a potential destination for Geno Stone, given the Baltimore connection that he has with Mike Mack. I wonder.
Yeah, Mike said no thanks to those guys, huh? Or at
He's
least
got to free things up. It's a clean slate. Love
Jamal
it, Mike.
Adams is such an intriguing story to me. But regardless, Ravens aren't signing either of these guys. They've got plenty of resources in that secondary position already locked up.
How about the former Raven? Panthers are planning to release tight end Hayden Hurst, who's had plenty of stops in the NFL since he was traded from Baltimore. He is a veteran now, which is crazy to think, and he's due a $1.85 million roster bonus on March 16th. See what kind of team needs his services at the tight end position. Any other free agency news that we had?
One thing on that, by the way, it's what's crazy is I don't have the number in front of me, but they're absorbing quite a bit of dead money to make this move with Hayden Hurst.
Carolina, yeah.
And but obviously the Ravens. First of all, once you ask to be traded, it's like, okay, we're done. Number one,
$9.8 million in debt.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. Now, didn't he have a ton of concussions last year?
He's been, he missed, actually, matter of fact, he missed 8 games. He missed the final 8 games last year due to one concussion, which is sad. And
it is sad.
And he had a lot. He's been through a lot. He's been battling his mental health.
Yes. Yep. Both physically and mentally, he's been through it. So I wish him the best. I just wanted to preemptively answer the question. I could hear from people asking, like, could he come back to the Ravens, But obviously the Ravens have plenty of tight ends and they're set there. And I also just wondered kind of what's next for him, but I do wish him the best because he has been through a ton. And remember, he had to transfer over from baseball. He got the yips and just.
Hayden is the man. I love that guy.
Fighting.
And I just wish, I hope he gets another shot because it's not looking, like you said, I'm kind of wondering too, is his NFL career coming to a close? I hope he gets another shot. So we'll see if that ends up being the case for former Ravens. He wasn't a first. Was he a first rounder?
Yeah, remember
He was in
they
2018.
picked him before Lamar.
Ahead of Lamar.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right. Shall we have a little bit of fun with Mike Preston before we finish up?
Yes.
All right. Longtime Baltimore Sun columnist Mike Preston put out a commentary piece on BaltimoreSun.com, and it was titled, "Ravens Still Searching for a Great Leader Like Ray Lewis." And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, what? What? What do you mean they're still searching for a great leader like Ray Lewis? And here's part of the snippets that I grabbed from the piece itself.
Okay.
The Ravens still miss middle linebacker Ray Lewis. I'm not going to read everything here. You know, if Lewis had been a member of the 2023 Ravens, what a great battle it would have been watching him against the Chiefs and Mahomes.
But it was a great battle already between Mahomes and the Ravens defense.
No doubt.
He scored 14 in the first quarter and then 3 the rest of the game. But I digress. Sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
Both of those players had that swagger and charisma that becomes contagious and makes everyone around them better. We now see that in Mahomes, who's played in 4 Super Bowls, won 3, 2 in a row, consummate professional, same aura of invincibility. The Ravens don't have that type of player on their roster. Not yet, anyway. Middle linebacker Roquan Smith has the potential, but he's only been in Baltimore for 1.5 years and is still learning the culture, identity, and work ethic of this franchise. Mike, you sure about that?
You gotta drag me off this field. I'll die for this. So make sure you got that mindset. When you step out here, they ain't gonna give it to you. We gotta take everything that they work for. Bring that stuff. Here we go. Hey, double L2. 1, 2. Yeah. I'm on that.
Come on, Mike. You sure about that? We got receipts. We got tape out here. Should we go to the next snippet?
Go. Keep going.
Let's keep going because I grabbed him. All right. Then he goes on to get after Lamar a little bit and says that he doesn't have the same type of confidence that the great ones had. Hall of Famers, Johnny Unitas, Joe Montana, John Elway, right? Those players could carry a team, but Jackson needs superior talent around him. Sarah, what had he done previously when they invested in him?
You skipped the line where it said they never had to talk about being quote unquote locked in.
Oh, those Hall of Famers.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Look at that little jab. But yeah, it's so funny because all we've talked about since basically last year has been like how Lamar had no weapons to throw to. I mean, we talk about the receivers until last year, and then last year it was good, but it wasn't like Bengals off the charts talent. You know what I mean? Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. Well, but like you said, like what about the 2 seasons prior to 2023 where when he went down, they were a playoff team. In one case, in 2021, they were atop the AFC when he went down, and by the time the season was over, they were either out of the playoffs or one and done. He carried them. He was the epitome of carrying a team.
He emerged he says he emerged somewhat as a leader on his way to his second NFL MVP. Just somewhat of a leader.
I don't understand. He was very jabby. You're right. He was very jabby in this. Then he goes on to get after Roquan. He says the same is true with Roquan. He understands the signature of this franchise's defense. His teammates soak up his words both on and off the field. He's become the player who consistently delivers the pregame speech, as Ray used to do. The Ravens need someone who, this is crazy. The Ravens need someone who transcends both offense and defense. Lewis had been on the roster for 6 years before he became the unquestioned team leader. He watched and learned from the big men who played in front of him. Goose, Sam Adams, Rob Burnett, Michael McCrary. You sure he doesn't transcend, though? I don't know. He told us something about that.
Yeah, I was just like, more so in a nutshell, we were saying to each other, but what I was saying to him was that, hey, we took care of business today, but bro, we just getting started. And I know how you locked in on the year. we know what we in this for. We going for the big one. We want to know each and every week. I said, you make sure the O rolling, and I know you're going to do that. And, I'm going to make sure these boys on D. We flying to the ball. We doing everything we can. We're going to keep getting you that rock. And we're going to make sure we do everything we can to get us where we need to be. And I said, everything's going to go through us. So just make sure we holding each other accountable day in and day out. And that was like mainly the gist of the conversation.
You know what else is funny? So first
Wait,
of all,
Lamar's on the offensive side of the ball, though, right?
yeah.
I just want to check that. I think last time I checked, he's on the offensive side.
Well, you know what else is funny? Because we tend to have selective memory about the greats, and we remember all the good times and not like the not great times. And Lamar is definitely, Ray Lewis is definitely a great and phenomenal and one of one and generational and all of those things. And at the same time, and I just always come back to this because I covered it and talked to Steve Bisciotti about it. One of the reasons why they moved on from Brian Billick is because the defensive side got toxic and wouldn't let the offense have an identity. It became, don't screw this up. And so it was like nobody on that side of the ball felt like that, you know what I mean? That was what Bisciotti tasked Harbaugh with. And the defense was mad initially with Harbaugh for it because he came in hard. And it was like, no, because the offense, we're building that side of the ball too. It's not a don't get in our way offense. This is a we want to be great on both sides of the ball. And so with Ray being the leader, he was part of that. Now, to Ray's credit, obviously, he went on and helped get another Super Bowl ring, and it was a much more balanced team, and he was able to adapt and be flexible and all of that. But let's not forget, prior to that time, that Steve Bisciotti felt like it became so toxic. So transcending, or were they looking down upon the offense in those earlier years? That was obviously a problem.
And to act as if the way that Mike's writing kind of comes across as if Roquan hasn't been a key contributing piece to transforming this team from a leader both on and off the field in the last year and a half is ludicrous.
We all saw it the moment he was traded, and everybody said, man, he came right in, and it was like Marlon Humphrey has compared him to Ray Lewis. Justin Tucker, who played with Ray Lewis, has compared him to Ray Lewis. Like Ray Lewis has compared him to Ray Lewis. Like, now again, I'm not going to say in terms of like just taking on a city and all of that. Maybe if Roquan had been drafted here, maybe that would have been it. And again, as good as Roquan's speeches are, I will still tip a cap to Ray. So I'm not saying that, but to say that you're still searching for it is like saying, hey, Bulls, why didn't you go get another Michael Jordan? Or hey, Lakers, why didn't you go get like exactly Kobe Bryant, even though you've had stars since him, including LeBron? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like Celtics. Why didn't you go get, I'm going back to, like, you can tell my age. I'm going back to like all the 80s people. Go get another Larry Bird, you know? I'm sure there's more current examples or whatnot, but I was much bigger into the NBA when I was younger. So, but it's just like, you know, like it's those, hey, Patriots, why didn't you just go get another Tom Brady? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
and you can still be sensitive to like making sure that Ray
gets his due.
Protected, and gets his due, because Roquan hasn't won anything yet. You know, he's won. There's plenty of accolades, but the big one hasn't been captured yet. You can still be sensitive to making sure that you protect Ray, but at the same time, he doesn't need to be protected because, like you said, we're not the ones. Nobody in media is the ones that are saying, sure, we made our comparisons or whatever. The fact that Roquan, from a tone setting standpoint, leadership standpoint, all those things reminded us of him. Sure, we've made those comments, but the ones who really matter are the past, present Ravens who are saying that, like you named. That is what holds legitimate weight. And so I don't know if this is a piece that's trying to like, you know, slow our roll in terms of what we're expecting from Roquan or whatever, out of respect to Ray. I'm not sure what the objective was.
He also made fun of Ray a lot in those last years, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have time. Listen, how about for the next episode, I go look for those receipts. But it was like, oh, rah, da, 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 you know, kind of ordeal.
Unbelievable.
Quick hits.
What you got?
So this is just another one. Again, comparisons are what always get people talking. But this fantasy points, website was like, see how Jaden Daniels from the LSU quarterback, how his profile stacks up to 2-time NFL MVP Lamar Jackson. He has this graphic where it's comparing their final season of college, and Daniels, to his credit, is awesome, and beats Lamar in some of these categories. And some of these are more legit categories than the last one we were looking at when we were comparing
Justin Fields.
Yeah, Justin Fields, exactly. So there's some legit stuff, but this is
And we weren't. ESPN's Get Up was.
Right.
Just
to make that totally clear. Yeah. So anyway, another guy who does fantasy stuff, Scott Barrett. So this original tweet had like maybe 46 likes.
This is awesome.
Scott Barrett quote retweets it, and his has like 4,000 likes the last time I looked. So Jaden Daniels, Sudu, Brandon Ayuk, Ricky Pearsall, Rashad White, Brian Thomas Jr., and Malik Neighbors. Okay. Kind of legit targets. Okay. Lamar Jackson, I'm going to butcher some of his wide receivers' names because A, I didn't follow him at Louisville, and B, we haven't heard from him really since, right? So
these are not easy. These are not easy.
Do you want to give it a try?
I mean, maybe. I've never even looked at them, but TJ Juxon,
got that.
DeCatholic
Mango.
Yep, DeCatholic Mango. Sorry, I thought that was I thought the Tyrol, the next one was all in the same word, same name. So yeah, so TJ Juxon, DeCatholic Mango, Tyrol Smoochie Wallace, and Buster's Browns. Buster's Browns.
Like. Which again, if we had followed him, if they were like big names in the NFL, like I would have butchered Brandon Ayuk's name, right? If he never went into the NFL, because I wasn't, you know what I mean? And so, but we know that name. So, and this goes back to like our conversations about MVP and just going stats against stats. It's like stats are important, as I will continue to repeat, but they're secondary. Or context needs to be put with it. And this is the exact context that you need.
Love it. All right, a couple more before we jump here quickly. Josina Anderson was asked by a follower of hers about OBJ. Are you hearing anything? And she said, I personally have heard from a couple of AFC teams so far in my own conversations. He remains highly motivated as expected. So he's going to get free agency.
Me if one of those teams was the Jets.
And maybe Kansas City. You never know.
Oh, stop it.
You never know.
In my mind. I just, it makes me sick. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jets were definitely in on him, as we learned this time last year. Tyler Linderbaum's the 97th best player in football for 2023, according to PFF standards. 573 pass blocking snaps, 0 sacks allowed, and just 18 QB pressures. And that is a guy, while there is some inconsistency and uncertainty moving forward on the O-line, he is not among those feelings whatsoever.
No, he's the one piece that you're moving forward with and you feel solid about. Building block right there.
Oh boy. Shout out Michelle Spate. I'm moving too quickly. Shout out Michelle Spate and Neil Harold. Thank you both. Sorry, Michelle, for butchering that. Thank you both for believing in what we're building here in Baltimore. And if you're interested in doing the same out there, visit patreon.com/RavensVault podcast to learn more about what we're offering and maybe even sign up for a monthly shout out tier. All right, partner. So we will be back. We'll follow on the news cycle, of course, as always this week as we make our way to the new league year, which begins at 4 Eastern next Wednesday across the NFL. So for Sarah Ellison,
Monday,
right? There's going to be a 48-hour period where we're really going to be following this closely. So our format and everything and schedule-wise will be a little bit different next week. We'll tell you more about that before this week's over. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you to you guys out there for listening. I'm Bobby Trossett signing off from this Wednesday morning vault. We'll talk to you soon.